this is the second bit, is the reason I don't want to invest in data is because I'm doing all right at the moment. And the difference is, you, again, go back to financial services, the growth of those new challenges is huge, absolutely huge.
Mm.
And the performance, the profitability might not be there yet because they've invested a load front end to do that. But the growth and the number of customers that they are taking from the established financial service sector is huge. And whilst you might not see the customer leakage in year one, year two, year three, you'll see over time that those businesses are going at a stronger, more upward trajectory than the core business. And if you're happy being flat or suboptimal to where you can be, fine. It's not for everybody. Pardon me. Investing in data is not cheap, right?
Mm.
Let's be honest. It's and that's not just the cost of paying people to sort it out. It's the resource decisions you need to make internally in terms of investing time and resource to get this right. But once you do it, it's not a project that finishes. It's a project that keeps developing and keeps going on and so forth. So if you're investing, you're in and you invest it. And each business has to make that decision. And they have to say, is it worth me paying X to get this? And sometimes that is a growth play, and sometimes it's a defensive play.
Mm.
I might need to invest to stop people taking my market share, or people, my customers leaving and going elsewhere. Unfortunately, history is littered with lots of businesses that don't invest at the right time, and then all of a sudden they'll hit a cliff edge. BlackBerry, great example of, a business that was flying and didn't invest, and didn't see the competitors coming because they had better
Mm.
products and better user experiences and better customer experiences. And there's no reason in any way why BlackBerry could not have been at the start of the smartphone revolution. They had all of the infrastructure, they had all of the market share and the brand recognition, but they didn't want to invest in that next phase. So then Apple came through and Android came through, and where's BlackBerry? Where's BlackBerry now, right?
Mm.
And there's loads of examples of that littered through the business history.
Mm.
But that's not a call. I'm not saying to everybody go out and invest in day to day. It's what's right for your organisation, um, and but understand that the future is going to be is tech led because it's here already, and there are still lots and lots of organisations that are thinking about, are at the first stage of that rather than the AI stage of that. That's what I'm saying.
Got you. Speaking of AI,
Mm.
I would love for you to just explain to our audience a little bit about how machine learning works when it comes to data. What is the value of using AI when it comes to data, and what kind of things can you actually achieve with it?
Yeah. So I'm a guy who works in data. I love data. I love what it can achieve. I love what AI can do. And I think people, it's going to be harsh to sort of present this. I think a lot of people look at AI and think that is the solution. I hear a lot of things in the press and so forth saying AI is going to be the solution. It's not sentient. It's not working things out itself. What it is a series of programs and algorithms that are trained on millions and billions and billions of possibilities and outcomes and things that have come together to take all of that learning to give you a solution and answer that doesn't require a human to do all of that learning and thinking about it, right? So one of the best examples I think of things like machine learning is things like, again, in financial services, improvement, being approved for a mortgage or being approved for a loan. I was at an event the other day where, I don't know whether I can name the building society, but quite a major building society in Yorkshire said that they'd taken their approval rate for mortgages or time for mortgages down from 30 days to 30 seconds. And that's because all of the complex things that people used to look at in mortgages, like salary and nationality, and they have a passport, are they a driving license, what's their credit history, da 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 da, where do they live now, all of that sort of stuff is done in an instant because the AI has been trained, the machine learning has been trained to understand that. So you can get a mortgaging principle in 30 seconds. The challenge with AI is that it is absolutely dependent on the quality of inputs into it. So there are two major issues, or two major challenges rather, with AI. The first one is around bias in base data and bias in questions. So you hear a lot about gender bias and racial bias because it depends where it's been trained. If the AI has been trained from a predominantly Western point of view, there are issues and challenges around bias to certain other parts of the world, other nationalities. If it's been trained by men, there are certain things that they will not be affected to do. And there's loads of issues and loads of documented cases of where AI has racial and gender bias. They will improve over time, but it's a real challenge and issue at the moment. That is a big challenge and it's a real issue. The real massive challenge is the quality of the data coming in. So I'll give you a really good example. I was talking to someone probably about 8 months ago now, and that business had gone and bought an AI module and spent millions of pounds on that AI module, and they had plugged it in and it didn't work. And they were like, what's going on? Why is it not working? They're talking to the provider. The provider saying, no, you've got all this stuff coming through, should be working. They didn't know how it worked. It turns out that there was one small part of the ordering process in the whole of their organization. They were a manufacturer of products that in the warehouse was still done on paper and Excel. And that bit hadn't been fed into the AI because it was paper. And it couldn't get fed into the AI because it's on paper. And then therefore the first domino had been flipped. And all the way through the algorithm, it didn't have this, so that it was just not computed at the end of it. It's been scoped as part of it. And they were then going to have to spend a significant amount of resource on sorting out that particular bit. Now, that's an extreme example. Right? Examples like that don't happen every single day. But it's a real watch out, which is you have, again, a lot of pressure and a lot of press that AI is going to be the solution. It's going to solve all your manufacturing resource planning. It's going to solve all of the forecasting. It's going to solve all that. And it will do a brilliant job because what it will replace is the mundane stuff that humans are doing. Because when humans find things boring, the accuracy goes down and the error goes up. And also, it takes a human a lot longer to get all those various bits of data than a machine learning can compute it quicker. But this comes back to the sequencing. Your core data, the foundations of the house, have to be robust, strong, consistent, accurate before you even think about going from there to a machine learning or to an AI step. And that's the bit that people often forget. This is not an investment. It's not a race where you can go from recording things in the paper in the warehouse to AI next week. You have to go through the due diligence of those steps because otherwise the output will be suboptimal. And there's probably significantly more businesses that haven't done the due diligence for all of the reasons that we talked about earlier in this conversation, that it's hard. It's really hard when you've got different bits of data in different places to be able to do that. And, where it works, it's really effective, but it tends to have been a lot of behind the scenes structuring of that data and getting it right. Or it's the business that doesn't have the legacy. It's the business that doesn't have those different pots of data in different places that they've been able to build and structure their data. And in a way, that's unfair, right? If you're a new starter, quite in the old non-tech world, first starter had the advantage. A big financial institution bank had all the all the high street branches. They had all the people in the customer service center. They had all the marketing budget. And these new people shouldn't exist. But because these new people have really understood their customer, have got all the data sorted, and they can start to utilize AI and ML to make those very quick decisions on loans, or very quick decisions on savings accounts, or very quick decisions on what's going on, they're being able to go at a faster, more customer focused pace, because the world around is demanding more of that, as they and then you see that move of customers to those products and services. Same in legal. You look how many businesses you can do conveyancing, online. I saw a brilliant presentation from a business about online conveyancing. I had a fantastic conversation last week with a business who want to take the problems and pains out of bereavement when somebody dies, instead of having to go around 27 financial institutions and legal institutions to register death and work out what's going on. They're building this portal that'll do it a one-stop shop, because it integrates with all of the other financial institutions and does all of that stuff outside it really quickly with some great ML and AI. And that'll be I hope they're a great bunch of people. I hope they build a really strong business. But all of these niches where customer need can be reacted to really quickly, because you don't have that base data issue. Those are the bits where ML and AI will grow rapidly in the next few years. The rest of it's about, you've got to get your foundation first to then try and catch up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think I just want to reiterate a couple of points that you said there. So the key value that we find with AI is that it can find insights that humans might miss, right? It can find patterns quicker, and it can find things that, most people might skip over. But as you said, companies really need to make sure they've got their core data strategy right until they jump on this whole AI ML trend. They need to make sure they are collecting the right data, and also they need to know what do they want to do with it. As you said, it's all about the inputs into AI. You touched on a little bit earlier about customer data privacy.
Yep.
I've got another stat to throw at you here. So
Ooh,
this is
exciting.
a survey from Deloitte, which revealed that 79% of consumers are concerned about how their data is being used, with a further 82% demanding more control over how companies use personal information. So when it comes to retail brands specifically,
Yep.
how can they get that balance between handling customer data in a way that considers privacy and security, but also using it to their own benefit to create these really effective sales strategies?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think before I say anything on it, they have to use it legally, right? I mean, it's an absolute given. I don't think, thankfully, I don't think there's a lot of examples of people not utilizing data legally and around GDPR. I think the interesting thing is, where people give permission to use the data is the value they get back from that. So if you look in the retail world, why did Clubcard, which was Tesco Clubcard, been the first sort of major loyalty scheme that Tesco and dunnhumby did together in the sort of early to mid 90s? Why did that grow really, really quickly? Well, that grew because people saw the value from what they were doing in terms of the transaction of giving up their data. So, in effect, you are paying me, or you are giving me money off my shop based on how I shop for things that I want, things that I have value to me as a person. Therefore, I can sort of see the transaction. And what's interesting is, I think it's a really good stat that you shared. When you look beyond the headline, There's less issues in areas like retail with retailers because they're getting the value back from loyalty schemes and loyalty cards. It's more around financial institutions or public sector or things where it's there's less of an immediacy of link. I mean, I don't think anybody really signs up for a retail loyalty scheme and thinks about how they're going to use my data. What they're thinking about is, oh, if it's Greg's, how many pasties do I need to buy before I get a free sausage roll? Or if it's Marks and Spencer's, how much do I need to spend before I get a free bottle of prosecco? Or if it's Nectar, what's the how much can I spend on a Eurostar fare or whatever? How much do I need to do? So I think it's pretty. I think that's a bit headline to sort of be applied directly to retail. But the point is true, which is it's a transaction. So if you know something about me, there is a point where I am prepared to let you utilize that data if it is going to give me a personal advantage and it's going to give me something that I want. And I think the hard bit, certainly in loyalty, is getting the balance between the commitment to share the data and the reward back. So we've seen a lot recently with devaluation of loyalty schemes. So Tesco devalued or are about to devalue their scheme. We've seen Costa. I don't think Costa have taken it from 8 cups to 10, I think it is now off the top of my head. And that's partially in reaction to inflation and all of those things. But it is a fine line. At what point do you start saying, I get no return? And I think when you think about that from a personal perspective, I would imagine with the nature of this podcast, a number of the listeners will be people who have a big interest in loyalty schemes and are signed up to 3, 4, 5, whatever. I think the point where you stop using the loyalty scheme and you're just signed up and it's a dead account, that tells you you're not getting the value from the loyalty scheme that you're getting. And I think everyone look at we don't have it in our wallets these days, look at the digital wallet on your phone and look at the number of cards and say, when was the last time I used that? And then that starts you thinking about, well, what is it about the nature of that loyalty scheme that means I don't use it anymore? Is it that maybe I've gone into a different phase in my life? It may be that it's a loyalty scheme for that's really focused on single people. So it might be a loyalty scheme for going to the cinema. And you know what? I've just started a family, and lo and behold, I won't go to the cinema for another 3 or 4 years. So it's got no value for me. Or it may be that I used to spend lots and lots of money in Mamas and Papas or something like that because I had a child, but that child's now grown up. So it might be something that's changing about you, or it might be that the retailer is devaluing it, or the manufacturer is devaluing it, and you're not seeing the value in it anymore, and it doesn't feel like the great deal it was when you signed up to it, or it may be that it's not right for a loyalty scheme. There's some real basics in the world of loyalty. There are only 4 things that you can change or use a loyalty scheme, customer behaviors that you can identify that a loyalty scheme will change. That's number of customers coming through the door, how frequently those customers shop, how many items they put in the basket, and what's the average price that they pay for that basket. And that is the same whether you're a cinema, whether you're a food retailer, whether you're a car retailer, whatever. But think about the frequency. The frequency when you come to loyalty is quite an interesting piece. Is if it is a really infrequent purchase, I think the question is whether loyalty is the right approach or not for that. It's really difficult for Jaguar to have a loyalty scheme because people might only buy a Jaguar car once every 4.5, 5 years. Well, fundamentally, that's more about brand and loyalty through brand and product and service and making it easier to get the car serviced and maintained and all of that sort of stuff. Just because you have the data doesn't mean that you should jump straight into a preset loyalty scheme as a solution for that. Where loyalty tends to work really well is high frequency purchasing. I think about the loyalty schemes that I like. I I think there's some brilliant ones. I do a lot of travel for work. So I love the LNER one. I love the LNER perks. I think that's great. I love Hilton Honors because they are linked to what I do, and I see a benefit. So I can use the money I'm building up in a cash bank for LNER to go on train tickets with my wife or my son over the weekend, or we can go away on holiday, or whatever, because that's relevant to me. It's about that relevance of the offer, and that's the I think the key message in that piece is if it's relevant, people will give their data. If it has value, people will give their data. And the question is, when people are not wanting to give their data or are reserved as per the original sort of stat, is that actually because they're not being shown the value and what that would give in handing over that data? I think it is fascinating, but the question I would ask is, what's the outcome? Is it that Tesco are that desperate to get your data that they want you to buy a club card? I think there's probably some truth in that. I think to an extent, there was some acquisition of new club card members because all of a sudden you go, well, this person I'm stood next to in the aisle is buying this can of Pringles for 50p cheaper. Do you know what? I can see the value. Going back to the question we talked about earlier, I can see the value in that because I'm in there. We know that when you have a loyalty card, that you're likely to spend more money with that retailer if you continue to see the value in it. I think it's also a very sensible way to try and offset inflation, and it is a way that can make the shop look cheaper than it actually is. Because when you add up all those 25p's as you go around, it may or may not have an impact on the overall basket. It's a bit difficult without the data to say whether people are spending less or spending more. What I think is really the measure is, think about those four things. So when I use a loyalty scheme, I'm either trying to get more customers, I'm trying to get them shop more frequently, I'm trying to get them to put more in my basket, or I'm trying to get them to spend more per item. Well, if I'm reducing prices, I'm not going to be getting them to spend more per item. That's fine. That's all right. But and I might get some more customers, but as you say, there's a barrier, and there's a barrier of going and setting up a card. And if you're just popping into that local shop and you're just trying to buy some bags of crisps or whatever, I can imagine the customer going, "That's not worth the hassle for 35p for me to go and sign up for a club card to scan something to get 35p off. It's not worth it, right? It's not worth it." So outside of the initial acquisition of some new people, doesn't feel like it's a real acquisition driver. So that leaves you with frequency and the number of items per basket. So if I can deliver, I'll come back to frequency. I come to number of items per basket. Right. So if I'm reducing prices, in most instances, if I decrease the price, I'll increase the volume. And there are a bunch of suppliers out there who want to do promotions, but we live in a world where there's limited space. And guess what? Tesco or Sainsbury's or another supermarket don't want to pay for that. So it's a good way to do an on-shelf promotion, and we will work out the redemption based on the number of people who buy it on a club card. So therefore, you're going to see a true uplift. We're only going to sell something that you're only going to reduce the price on something that sells. So I think to a large extent, when you think about it, it's about trying to get more stuff in the basket, or get items in the basket that wouldn't ordinarily be on it because you dropped it below a price threshold. So I would imagine club card pricing works really well in impulse areas. So things like crisps and drinks, and you see a lot of it in there when you go into that area because, oh, all of a sudden, didn't want those Pringles, but it's only £1.50. I'll dive into that, and I can see that my main shop is Sainsbury's. I can see that in there as well. And you look at the stuff they've got at the front of the store. Aperol Spritz was on there, Kellogg's cornflakes, all of these. It's all about stuff I might not know ordinary buy, but it feels like it's a bargain, right? So it's in that sort of promotional volume. It's a really simple, easy, consistent message, and that's the bit around frequency, which is I know when I go into a shop there will be a number of products that will be on a reduced price because I happen to be already a shopper in there. And I think in time it will just wilt into being a promotional mechanic, which is probably what it is already, albeit that if I can then get that data, I will try and drive you to do things outside of those products that I am going to lose revenue or price per item on because I've got all that data and now I can get you to buy some bananas when you didn't buy bananas before. I can get you to buy some Persil when you didn't buy Persil before. But I think it's somewhere between a promotional mechanic to drive more volume into a basket and maintain market share, especially with inflation, especially with the discounters. But I think it's trying to get some trust around feeling a bit special rolled up in a long-term data plan. I don't think it's led. That's my gut feel. I don't think it's led by data. I don't know if that does that make sense.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting to see in my local Sainsbury's, they have, as soon as you go in, it's like 2 nectar price aisles. And it's exactly what you said. It's all the impulse buys. It's the crisps and the chocolate and the alcohol, things that you're like, oh, that's a good deal. I'll pop that right in my basket.
Because if it was altruistic, if it was much more you're part of this family, the money would be off chicken.
Right.
It'd be off pasta. It would be off the staples in that corner. It would be off milk, right? You take 5p a litre off milk, or you take 5p a litre off petrol. And I think that's, and I'm not knocking Tesco, Sainsbury's at all. I think they've got brilliant business models, but they know there's a price elasticity, and you're always. But if you take 5p off a pint of milk, you're not going to sell any more milk. You're not,
Right.
But if you take 5p off crisps and drinks, you sell some more, and they operate in a world of a market share where they need to keep the market share up for the value and the market, the value of the business and the return to shareholders. So they're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing, but it's not about. I don't think it's about this wider piece. It's a balance between them trying to drive more volume and suppliers who know if they reduce the prices will drive more volume. I think it's a good deal for a supplier because I'm only going to pay for the promotion on the ones that are redeemed at the reduced price rather than the ones that are redeemed. When I worked in retail, there was always an argument of suppliers, which was I'll put something on a 3 for 2 deal when those used to exist. And not every single product bought would have been on the 3 for 2 deal, yet the supplier would pay as if every product had been bought on the 3 for 2 deal. So I think it's a good deal for suppliers. I think the challenge is, for me, maybe call me cynical, maybe call me old-fashioned or whatever. I struggle to see past the reason to do it other than to drive the commercials of the organisation. I think there are some loyalty schemes that aren't like that are quite altruistic, and those are ones of things like where you invest in green technology or invest in replanting stuff or you invest in it's done from an altruistic reason, but there's a lot less people in the country who think about that than there is people who want to save money on their shopping.
For any data leaders listening who want to upskill themselves or upskill their teams, making sure that the team around them has a really good level of knowledge, what do you think, from your perspective, are the key skills that data teams need to really succeed?
Really good question. I think what we find, and again, I'm going to start in a slightly negative place and come back to the positive place, is when an organization goes, I've got it, I need to invest in data. I need to sort out my base data, what they generally do is look in the market and go, I need a team, probably sits in the center somewhere, and it's going to have some data engineers, it's going to have some data scientists, it's going to have some data governance people, and it might have a data leader sat in the top of it. And they launch that into the organization. And what happens is the base data needs some work on it. And that's the world of data engineering. So data engineers while away at that, do loads of work, sort out the data, sort out the structures, sort out the piping, and then the data scientists go, well, what am I going to do? What am I'm here to understand the outputs and use. Most data scientists are very clever people, far cleverer than I am. Use my very clever brain to work out what's going on with this stuff, so I can make a difference, because they're really focused on logical and analytical stuff to sort out problems and find solutions. And the data scientist sits around and goes, well, what am I going to do? And there's not a lot for them to do until the base data is sorted out. And they live in a world where there's a high demand from a low supply, and we see loads of examples where data scientists go and leave. And I think that's because of the sequencing of data and the sequencing of sorting stuff out. So what I would always advise is never enter into a 3-year project or an 18-month project to sort your data out, because it's not an 18-month project to sort your data out. In reality, it's a series of small experiments to understand what is going on and understand what needs to be changed within your organization to get those foundations right. So don't invest heavily into a big team to start with. Invest into a small core team that can run those experiments and understand what is happening with data, where do you need to fix it, and what is the output when you fixed it. So think of it much more like lots of 4-week and 6-week stuff of 3 or 4 people rather than a team of 10 people. And then when you've done all those experiments, or you're in the flight of doing those experiments, that does 2 really interesting things. One, it helps your CFO understand where the return on investment comes. Because on this project here, I've spent X amount of money and delivered Y. And the CFO goes, oh, you've told me within 6 weeks, you've given me a data point to help me forecast for the rest of the year or forecast for the next projects. You're not saying to me, in 18 months' time, I'll give you £1 million worth of benefit, and then we'll get together in 18 months' time and you'll argue with me why it's not £1 million and demonstrate why it would never have been £1 million. So you get the CFO on side, but also it allows you to understand where the biggest benefit from sorting the data challenges out comes, and allows you to shape a team based around that. Go back to the real start of this conversation, we talked about people working in silos. It may be for your business that a core central data team is the best place to start. It may be that you have a very tiny core central team in data, and you have a load of people sat in marketing, a load of people sat in trading, a load of people sat in operations, a load of people sat in finance, and you manage them as a matrix to help understand that data coming together to create that single view of the customer. But you don't know that until you've done the work and done the experiments to understand that. So the piece of advice I would give is, don't pre-populate your team, and don't set up a project that takes 18 months to 3 years and decide on day one what you're going to deliver, because nobody can tell you on day one what you need to deliver until they start doing the experiments. And if you don't approach it in that way, you get to a point which is, I'll sort my data out, and then 18 months' time, I'll put a loyalty platform in. And you go to put the loyalty platform in, and it doesn't work, or it isn't optimal because you've got an issue that you should have sorted here that was in marketing, but you didn't see it because you never put anybody in marketing. You never thought to look at that particular thing that was in there. So it's not a call to go outside your organization and talk to lots of consultants. It's a call to go, how do you quickly demonstrate return on investment, and how do you shape a team based on what the business needs? Well, the only way to do that is to understand what your actual business needs and really get into the nitty gritty before you decide to commit to something that is set in stone. Because underlying all of this, shock horror, tech isn't static, data isn't static. It evolves, and it evolves really, really quickly. And if you've committed to something on day one for 3 years' time, there's no guarantee that might be out of date by the time you get to that point. Well, I like loyalty programs that give the right value. So I did LNER, I think, do a really good job. I do a lot of travel with LNER, so I think that that is really good. I like Hilton because it's got me locked into that, and that it understands what I need. I think some of the really interesting ones are the aggregator ones at the moment. So I think I'm yet decided, but I quite like airtime rewards. I think that's quite an interesting platform because it's rewarding behavior in one sector to help with not money off your phone bill or whatever. I think I genuinely, I know I talked about Asda earlier, but I think Asda's loyalty scheme is really innovative, because you have a field of points based schemes, and it's clearly not a point based scheme, and it's a cash return scheme. And I think that's bang on to where their customers are, and I think that is a really interesting. I'd love to see how that evolves. I know there's some press releases that's like it's in the nation's top 10.
Here are the key takeaways. When companies don't invest in data at the right time, they fall behind quickly. Luckily, AI is here to help fast track a lot of the complicated data work that businesses have been burdened with over the past decade. However, the effectiveness of AI depends on the quality of inputs. Your core data needs to be robust, accurate, and consistent before you even think about an AI and machine learning strategy. And that's why so many businesses are turning to loyalty programs, to collect detailed first-party data and to really understand who their customers are, what they do, and how they behave. The data collected through a loyalty program can be used alongside an AI module that can help you find insights within the data. At White Label Loyalty, our AI module can also help you predict churn so that you can create a customer retention plan before it's too late. And when it comes to customer data privacy, there's some things you need to remember. Customers are happy to share their data with you as long as they're getting some value in return. That's another reason why so many businesses are offering rewards, to incentivize consumers to share their data and in return deliver more personalized and more meaningful experiences. And finally, if you're a data leader and you want to make sure you're staying ahead, be flexible when it comes to data projects. Remember that tech and data isn't static, it moves really quickly. Make sure your team is prepped to pivot objectives and try not to commit to long-term data projects. Instead, keep them centered on short, focused goals that help identify and smooth out any data issues, such as silos that occur within your business. If any of these issues resonate with you, White Label Loyalty has solutions to help with first-party data strategy, AI insights, and getting you closer to your customers.